Ecstasies of Influence asks a simple question about inter or trans art. Usually in inter-artistic or trans-artistic projects, each artistic form of expression works towards one common goal by using its own specific artistic methods and strategies. These artistic strategies usually come from the sensory medium in which each of the different arts works, the verbal, the visual, the sonic, body or space, or even our brain. Sometimes these methods and strategies overlap or condition each other, but in most research and production situations, they run in parallel. Each artistic contributor is asked to make their contribution in the way they can do them best. An installation artist does not think of a space in the way in which a musician thinks of the melody. While writing, a writer pays no attention to the color corrections that trouble the video artist. In Ecstasies of Influence, I, as a musician, wondered if these idiosyncrasies of trans and inter-art projects could not also become a focal point for such energies of trans and inter work. Could we transfer creative strategies from one art practice into the creative processes of music and sound? We wanted to ask other artists to explain to us how they personally came up with their art. Did they doodle into a journal? Did they build prototypes? Did they translate scientific data into an image? How did they progress from idea to finished artwork? And we wanted to transfer these specific and largely individual strategies into the invention of a new musical experience. When we invited these other artists, these non-musicians artists, we made sure that none of them had a deep musical education or a musical practice. We did not want them to unconsciously translate their art into musical terms. We wanted them to explain themselves to us as if they explained their process to a fellow artist in their discipline. We also explained that they were not required to create something themselves. The outcome should be music only, not a dance piece, no installation with sounds, no music video. In short, no inter-arts collaboration in the usual sense. The invited artists were to be not our colleagues, more our gurus, our senseis, our teachers.
On that theatrical day, today,
The most complicated and ambitious of the three projects took place in Montreal in the fall of 2018. Here, we worked with three non-musician artistic gurus. Deborah Caruthers, a conceptual artist who works mainly with scientific insights around climate change and the Anthropocene.
I'm interested in this idea of memory and loss, and also particularly solastalgia. What solastalgia is the distress that you feel when your environment changes and you are unable to leave.
David Santo, a relational artist whose practice revolves around food and food making in all its dimensions.
Yep.
Angelique Wilkie, a choreographer whose focus is on solo work based on her personal autoethnography.
If I think of my the influence of my mother in who I am in my artistry, maybe that's the kind of sound that emerges. If I think of my father, it's a different. It's a silly example,
Yeah.
but in fact, that's already part of what. So that in fact, I'm looking for what is my own food.
The Montreal musicians were not an existing ensemble. There were 6 outstanding musicians that I recruited from the scene of what is called here musique actuelle, which is a promiscuously crossover scene between experimental jazz, experimental electronic and computer music, avant-garde, written, composed music, and free improv. Their main qualifications for this project was to not be afraid of making and doing things that might look ridiculous to outsiders. Our process was to be simple. We would ask the artistic guru to come and demonstrate what they do when they embark on a new work. Maybe they showed us their sketches and drafts and notes. Then we, as musicians, would huddle and consider how we could translate this process into finding new musical expressions. Occasionally, we would invite the gurus to come and listen and guide us. It's interesting to note that all of them eventually chose to come to each session. They would thus become composers by suggesting possible solutions to musical problems, often without any language to describe them properly. Sometimes the musicians or me would push back, declare that the guru's suggestions are interesting but unrealizable. But more often we would not stop until we found a way to do the things as suggested. And the gurus, the artists, would respond by coming up with new ideas drawn from their discipline. For example, a choreography of musical bodies. An auction of musical sounds. Food made to enhance the instrument. Or an image of colonial exploration, exploitation, and short-sightedness. Or a sudden realization about what else is alive in live music.
If you don't clean the trombone, there's life inside, which is why initially I was hesitant to eat the caramel, but I don't actually clean it as much as I should.
All these excerpts that you saw are from the outcome performances of the Ecstasies of Influence Project. As you can see, they have very little to do with the common form of a musical concert. They are not imaginable, on the other hand, without any presentation. So we decided to call them unconcerts. 2 years later, in the pandemic winter of 2020-21, we revisited this project again, gathered the musicians again, made new videos, wrote new poetry. All came together in a form of an online exhibition for the Musée d'Art Contemporain de Montréal. This exhibition was called "Are You Out of Your Sound?" In this threesome of cities, through 2 falls, 1 monsoon, in a green Deccan valley, in a sandbox in Prussia, near a Mohawk river embroidered with ice, the sound and the unsound of our spindrift existence slowly convolved and took shape. Who twisted our tongues into intricate turns? Who seared our songs into thousands of burns? Who challenged our skins to stretch into ears? Who made us grow fins to counter our fears? Who crushed our bones for more affable chants? Who fashioned our tones from the voices of ants? There's nothing to sound but the air that we eat, that we swallow and knead into food for our ear. There's nothing to sound but the being we meet, that we beat and caress till it yields what we need. There's nothing to sound but a tear.
Go.